At first, it seemed like an appealing prospect, but the deeper I immersed myself in the topic, the stronger my apprehension grew. Recently, the group admitted new recruits, inserting some of them with a particular organism. Several readings later, I struggled to decipher the underlying message. Initially, I believed it referred to scientific experiments or an uncommon parasitic infection, but actuality proved far more sinister. Discussions among group members centered on the emergence of novel life forms purported to safeguard humanity's future. Muscles tensed involuntarily, and my throat constricted tightly, feeling choked by an invisible cord. Who are these madmen, and why did my husband align himself with such psychologically impaired individuals? Immediate confrontation looms ahead. Clarification is imperative. Likely extravagant financial inducements ensnared him. Most pressing now is preventing ongoing developments and terminating connections with this Kabbalistic assembly. Engulfed in contemplation, I settled into slumber, intent on waking my companion shortly thereafter. Unexpectedly, irregular bodily shifts captured my attention. Husband's abdomen trembled subtly, reminiscent of fetal kicks experienced during pregnancy. Clearly the analogy misplaced, yet startling nonetheless. Abruptly, he rose erect in bed, twitching sporadically as if controlled remotely. Closed eyes and rhythmic oscillation accentuated the macabre tableau. An urge arose to disturb him, yet intuition cautioned otherwise. Moments henceforth unveiled horrific sights, abdominal tissue extended abnormally, yielding passage to a serpentine mass squirming internally. Convulsions shook his form violently prior to flesh surrendering under relentless pressure, erupting in copious amounts of blood. Two appendages emerged sequentially from the opening, initiating a revolting spectacle wherein a grotesque entity extricated itself effortlessly through my still-breathing husband's torso, mirroring the metamorphosis of larvae transitioning from cocoons. Dim lighting afforded scarce visibility, but indelible images imprinted themselves permanently. Repugnant features manifested prominently, wrinkled facial contours lacking nasal structure, cavernous gaps substituting oral and ocular regions. Instantaneously, twin crimson dots ignited within these vacant spaces, likely functioning as optical receptors. Reacting impulsively, I thrust sharpened fingernails directly into the ghastly creature's retinas, provoking agonized screeches coupled with frenzied self-defensive maneuvers. Capitalizing on this distraction, I dashed toward exit. Luckily, securing the malicious intruder within our quarters preceded successful flight. Audible thuds resonated within walls before cessation, prompting neighbor intervention by summoning authorities. Panicked incoherence characterized my narrative delivery. Law enforcement officers consequently charged me provisionally with premeditated homicide based solely on circumstantial evidence. Upon arriving at the scene, however, the spectral entity vanished abruptly. Ultimately, liberation transpired courtesy of subsequent investigatory findings, linked explicitly to the criminal proceedings. Authorities declined elaborating further despite providing preliminary insights. Detection efforts led to identification of a covert religious faction worshipping archaic life forms, perpetrating barbaric sacrificial ceremonies. These disclosures subsequently cleared me legally. Remaining mysteries include precise causality behind my husband's involvement, alongside origins of the otherworldly entity, currently eluding capture through an open window. Presently, this obscure entity wanders unchecked, ostensibly presenting negligible danger. Alina questioned expectantly, locking eyes earnestly upon mine. Staring blankly, I paused momentarily before responding reassuringly. Strangely, she resembled Shrek's feline character, an uncanny parallel indeed. "We'll definitely manage. Don't fret," I promised resolutely, redirecting focus toward navigation. Technically speaking, labeling current tasks as renovation exaggerates somewhat. Essentially, installation of entryway fixtures, arrangement of furnishings, and configuration of child room power outlets suffice. Change inherently perturbs Alina. Additionally, she's prone to fearfulness. Hence, completing repairs efficiently within days brought considerable relief. Late-term pregnancy rendered additional stress counterproductive, thereby enhancing mutual satisfaction. Life flowed harmoniously thereafter. Alina remained indoors, relieving me from occupational duties whenever feasible. Arrival home consistently sparked her enthusiasm, particularly evident Friday's evening. Entering our apartment one eventful evening, I anticipated customary greetings. Instead, silence pervaded. Hushed calls yielded footsteps, echoing gradually closer. Emerging hesitantly, Elena bore signs of perturbation or sorrow. "You've returned." Her tone wavered slightly, veiled melancholy overshadowing relief. Troubling emotions simmered beneath the surface. Hygienic routines completed, I encouraged verbalization of concerns. Finally divulging accumulated anxieties, Alina detailed prolonged sleeplessness, punctuated by periodic episodes of watchfulness. Midnight tea consumption occasionally led to solitary balcony excursions, precipitating sudden sensations of observation. Yet, inexplicably, no discernible figures occupied adjacent areas. Perplexed, I queried further. Subsequent explanation cited downward glances, capturing unfamiliar female passers-by, scrutinizing intensively. Initially dismissed as random occurrences, persistent behavior escalated rapidly. Overwhelmed, Elena sought validation repeatedly, suspecting supernatural influences. Seeking resolution, I investigated personally. Stationed stealthily on the balcony, I scanned surroundings vigilantly. Curiously, no suspicious entities appeared visible. Gradual normalization resumed post-inspection, albeit residual skepticism persisted subconsciously. Weeks elapsed peacefully, punctuated periodically by similar reports relayed by Alina. Accumulating frustration prompted decisive action eventually. Standing brazenly opposite, attired completely in oppressive black fabric, stood the recurring apparition noted earlier. Daylight emphasized discrepancies starkly, whereas others donned seasonal apparel, reflecting ambient warmth. This sole individual embraced morbid darkness, irrespective of climatic conditions. Apprehensively surveying fellow residents enjoying recreational activities, I confronted her brusquely, issuing stern ultimatums, threatening dissent unless immediate departure ensued. Compliant reluctance defined her response, vanishing tentatively into shadows beyond reach. Observational patterns fluctuated predictably thereafter. Children frolicked enthusiastically. Adolescents strolled nonchalantly alongside diminutive canines. Elderly inhabitants indulged casually smoking cigarettes aloft elevated terraces. Collective normalcy underscored anomalies posed exclusively by this singularly isolated figure embracing somber attire contrary to prevailing trends. Her biography reflected complex histories intersecting critically with ours. Previously occupying adjacent units, tragic losses encompassed premature death affecting minor offspring, leaving lasting emotional scars irreparable. Years spent mourning exacerbated isolation tendencies significantly. Occasional visits triggered latent memories associated strongly with prior residency. Visual encounters reignited dormant trauma, engendering acute psychological distress, necessitating therapeutic interventions absent thus far. Manifestations included recurrent visitations coinciding with occupancy changes, fueling escalating hostility directed disproportionately toward innocent tenants, unaware of historical contexts preceding these unwelcome advances. Understandably alarmed, Alina voiced legitimate complaints frequently. Consistent dismissals failed alleviating sustained agitation, increasingly disrupting domestic harmony. Dramatic crescendos culminated, ultimately requiring external mediation strategies. Reluctantly accepting inevitable compromises, routine stabilized incrementally. Peaceful coexistence resumed temporarily until abrupt resurgences demanded heightened vigilance indefinitely. One unexpected midnight disruption resulted in panicked awakenings initiated by Alina. Responding hastily, I complied reluctantly. Questioning repeatedly, fragmentary fragments conveyed perceived abnormalities, warranting swift responses. Ultimately, resolving discordances pragmatically restored equilibrium partially. Unresolved tensions resurfaced episodically, necessitating continual negotiations balancing personal preferences versus communal responsibilities. It seemed promising at first, but the deeper I delved into the material, the more my worries grew. A group recently inducted new members, introducing an unusual organism into some. Rereading messages numerous times, I struggled to interpret their exact meanings. Initially, I presumed it concerned scientific experiments or rare parasites, but reality proved far darker. Members conversed about new life forms allegedly necessary for humanity's salvation. Muscle tension increased, my throat tightening uncomfortably. Why had my husband chosen association with these mentally unstable individuals? Urgency dictated direct confrontation. Possibly lured by lavish compensation, he succumbed easily. Current priority mandated stopping further progression and severing ties. Absorbed in reflection, I retired to sleep, intent on rousing my partner promptly. However, peculiar movements drew my attention. Husband's abdomen twitched, mimicking prenatal kicking, though acknowledging illogical parallels. Husband suddenly bolted upright, convulsing rhythmically like a puppet controlled remotely. Eyelids sealed, head bowed, he swayed continuously. Instinct drove me to rouse him, yet internal warnings advised restraint. Milliseconds later, unspeakable horror dawned. Abdominal tissues expanded abnormally, exposing an undulating object within. Violent contractions ripped through flesh, spraying blood liberally. Arms emerged successively, marking commencement of an unimaginable act, an alien entity expelling itself violently from husband's corpse. Sparse illumination offered inadequate clarity, yet impressions burned indelibly. Features defied comprehension. Wrinkled, noseless visage, vacuous eye and mouth sockets, replaced by shadowy depths. Seconds elapsed before crimson dots flickered presumably functional optics. Instinctively, I stabbed pointed nails viciously into the creature's ocular region, inducing ear-shattering screams. Exploiting temporary incapacitation, I raced toward escape, Fatefully securing the menace within, I departed swiftly. Residual vibrations permeated corridors, prompting neighbor intervention. Panicked incoherence ensued, failing to clarify sequence of events. Police charged me provisionally with murder, attributing blame incorrectly. Simultaneous disappearance, complicated investigations. Freedom ensued eventually, contingent upon investigative breakthroughs. Clarifications omitted. Investigators disclosed partial findings, detecting a clandestine cult devoted to arcane life forms, engaging in ritualistic sacrifices. Consequently, charges dropped. Reasons behind husband's involvement and origins of the monstrous entity remained murky. Situated surreptitiously, a woman wearing filthy glasses eyed a young mother propelling a stroller. Muttering reassurances, she declared cryptically, "Soon he'll return. Trust me." Smiling broadly, the mother guided the carriage purposefully, lost in admiration of her surroundings. Tranquil bliss dissipated abruptly as a spontaneous cry escaped her lips, rousing the sleeping infant into inconsolable tears. Frantic, she darted chaotically, seeking respite futilely. Nearby, the bespectacled woman smirked maliciously, disappearing silently. Suspicions festered regarding my wife's sanity following our move into this infernal apartment. Initial symptoms manifested through irrational fear of a dark-clad woman claimed to pursue relentlessly. Next, Elena reported paranormal phenomena, objects shifting positions, running water activating automatically. Urging medical consultation, paid or subsidized, I faced resistance. Admitting wellness, she insisted external factors accounted for anomalies. Arguments ensued fervently, compelling compromise. Installing surveillance equipment mitigated immediate anxiety. Saturday mornings evolved routinely. Elena scheduled beauty treatments, forewarning me well in advance. Acceding gracefully, I granted consent unconditionally. Departing preparations culminated in hypervigilance, repetitions reinforcing final reminders. Persistent reassurances cemented agreement before closure. Routine activities resumed normally until unexpected intrusions disrupted domestic harmony. Musical instruments played erratically. Water valves opened arbitrarily, triggering pandemonium. Internal fortitude crumbled progressively, yielding paranoia. Distraught, I conceded necessity for psychiatric evaluation. Defiance solidified Elena's resolve. Denying illness categorically, she rationalized unrelated causes. Mutual arguments deteriorated sharply, intensifying conflicts. Resolution hinged upon installing advanced monitoring systems, restoring semblance of stability. Incidents proliferated exponentially, culminating in perilous circumstances. Obscured camouflage cloaked a towering figure lurking sinisterly. Identifiable traits belied calculated intentionality. Distorted facial features, dilapidated attire embodying societal detachment. Observing indiscriminately, Elena's traumatic history intertwined tangibly with our lives. Relinquished maternal bonds fractured irrevocably, shrouding Elena's psyche in perpetual despair. Insufficient coping mechanisms catalyzed catastrophic consequences, shaping her existence irrevocably. Delusional fixation transformed benign intentions into pathological behaviors, perpetuating cycles of destruction. Chronic sleeplessness characterized our household. Feeble attempts at relaxation dissolved rapidly. Fortuitously, son Igor compensated for parental fatigue, resting soundly through night hours. Transitioning ownership became expedient. Marketing initiatives garnered minimal interest. Depression consumed Alina, eschewing sustenance, isolating emotionally. Fatigue-induced irritability escalated rapidly, eroding familial cohesion. Recreational habits devolved unpredictably, fostering environmental hazards. Parental supervision diminished drastically, permitting hazardous scenarios. Infantile artifacts behaved autonomously. Showerheads operated capriciously, augmenting systemic dysfunction. Epiphanies arose synchronistically, prompting strategic adaptations. Regular maintenance checks normalized routines, reducing uncertainty substantially. Technological innovations facilitated remote oversight, easing caregiver burdens significantly. Unforeseen complications materialized rapidly, instigating reactive protocols. Childhood belongings demonstrated sentience unpredictably. Shower mechanisms engaged spontaneously, magnifying cognitive overload. Objective reasoning deteriorated proportionately, escalating reliance upon improvisation. Forced awareness amplified susceptibility to exterior stimuli, amplifying anxiety levels logarithmically. Recurrent exposures induced neurological impairment, impairing executive functionality severely. Behavioral regression ensued systematically, destabilizing interpersonal dynamics fundamentally. Maternal attachment weakened precipitously, engendering estrangement dynamically. Neglecting core responsibilities, caregivers neglected nurturing obligations implicitly. Vulnerabilities compounded geometrically, jeopardizing developmental milestones comprehensively. Conclusively, I resolved terminating residential tenure, formalizing transfer processes rigorously. External contingencies hindered transaction completion effectively, prolonging precarious arrangements indefinitely. Emotional exhaustion overwhelmed resilience thresholds irreversibly, culminating in existential crises cyclically. The key refused to slide into the lock, forcing me to jam it in with brute strength. Inside, the apartment was silent, oppressively still. "Alina, can you hear me? Alina?" No answer came. Racing to her side, I administered first aid, but she didn't regain consciousness. Luckily, the ambulance arrived swiftly. Paramedics revived Alina and whisked her to the hospital. Gathering essentials, I collected the child and fled to my parents. The next day, I showed the video to my mother, who, unlike me, subscribed wholeheartedly to the supernatural realm. Searching for guidance, she suggested meeting a woman whom she knew indirectly. Unclear about her identity or profession, neither witch nor medium, I agreed reluctantly, assuming nothing worse could happen. That evening, I consulted the psychic, Albina. Attempting to demonstrate the footage, she requested I switch off the screen, laying out tarot cards instead. Fixated on interpreting them, her expression grew tense and focused. Impatience mounting, I pressed for insight. "Looks like you're dealing with a ghost," she stated plainly. "Didn't you just move into that apartment?" "Yes, but a deceased child resides there," she clarified gravely. "Seems proper burial procedures were followed, but something reanimated him. He's technically dead, but his spirit lingers." Confused, I asked for clarification. Albina shuffled the cards again. "There's a grieving parent nearby, probably the mother. She tried bringing him back. She's been observing you closely, desiring her son's spirit to occupy your child's body, but something went terribly wrong." Stunned, I felt adrift in a B-movie plotline, questioning the legitimacy of the scenario. "You need to move out immediately," Albina stressed. "I'll attempt assisting you." Resolving to maintain contact, I listed the apartment for sale. Low demand forced us into rental accommodation. While disappointed, Alina acknowledged the necessity, acquiescing gracefully. Slowly adjusting to the new location, we derived comfort from the absence of disturbance. Believing the ghost bound to the original apartment, I harbored hope for a tranquil future. After settling our son to sleep, Alina opted to multitask. Brewing tea, she positioned herself before a full-length mirror in the foyer. Before becoming pregnant, she habitually primped extensively, cherishing lengthy sessions before reflective surfaces. Smiling at her reflection, she retrieved her makeup kit. "Interesting. I'm still alive, aren't I?" she mused teasingly, applying mascara. Suddenly she screamed, dropping the brush and recoiling in horror. Beside her likeness in the mirror stood a small boy. His pallid face radiated a sickly glow, eyes listless like a dead fish, lips bruised an unhealthy shade of purple. Petrified, Elena lashed out at the mirror, sending shattered fragments scattering everywhere. Blood streamed from wounds scattered across her body. Off balance, she tumbled, slashing her palm on jagged edges. Bleeding profusely, she searched frantically for confirmation, realizing she was utterly alone. Heart pounding, she called me, shouting hoarsely into the phone, "Get here now!" Baffled by recent events, I recognized another chapter in our ongoing supernatural odyssey. How could we eliminate this curse? Albina advocated prayer and candles, but offered no tangible solution. Soon, she ceased returning my calls altogether. Plunging into madness, Alina gnawed her nails raw, chewed her lips bloody, enduring endless nightmares. Desperately wanting to comfort her, I too succumbed to psychological erosion. Exhausted and traumatized, Alina endured sleepless nights, tormented by grief. Bathe time for our son provided brief respite. Ringing phones interrupted her routine, diverting her attention. Snapping the call, she noticed a ghostly boy hovering beside the tub. In an instant, he yanked Yegerik's head underwater, gripping mercilessly, eyes lifeless, teeth clenched in rigid malice. Panicked, Elena hurled the phone aside, toppling the tub, grabbing her limp son protectively. Gasping apologies, she protested her innocence, maintaining it was the ghost, not her, who committed the atrocity. Emergency responders documented the scene. Sopping wet floors, overturned tub, displaced furniture. Swaddled in a blanket, our son lay motionless, skin tainted an ominous shade of blue. Devastated, Alina screamed hysterically, insisting she hadn't murdered her child. Deemed insane, Elena was institutionalized. Cut off from contact, I withdrew inwardly, limiting interactions with others. Sedatives prescribed by our district physician numbed me sufficiently. Consumed by the loss of my son, I pondered abstractly whether the woman in black, glasses streaked with dirt, felt any measure of relief.